Good morning. I'm Reverend Roy Atwood, and this is Aaron Reindel Sosa joining me live from FirstChurch here in the media room. We've got a great worship service today. It's Tim and Dana's 30th anniversary of working at First. I've tried to embarrass them as much as possible by pointing out there are members of the staff who are younger than 30, and we'll see if they're sufficiently chastened. They've planned a lot of really good music. We've got organ and brass, so it's going to be a great service today. I'm joined here with Aaron. Aaron, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and how you made it down to First Church.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Aaron Reindel Sosa, and I am on staff here at First Church. I'm a ministry associate, and I came on in about March full-time. I completed my internship here with Perkins Theological Seminary, and I'm actually finishing up in the fall with 1 credit hour left.
Oh, you just missed it.
Just barely missed it.
Are you walking in the spring, or are you walking later?
No, I'll be walking in the fall.
Oh, okay.
At the end, so after my 1 credit hour. But after that, I'll be pursuing ordination in this church. I'm on the agenda to see if they're going to sponsor me and move me through the process.
To be a certified candidate for ministry.
That's correct.
Yeah, the technical terminology. So tell me about yourself prior to getting here. Like, where'd you grow up and go to college and all those fun things?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm from the East Texas Pines in a little town called Newton, Texas. That's where I spent the majority of my childhood and feel most connected to. I went to Stephen F. Austin State University, a little bit north of there, about an hour.
In Nacogdoches?
Nacogdoches is the official term.
Wow.
But yes, Nacogdoches. And then following my time there, I came to Dallas because I wanted a little taste of the big city. Just kidding. I came here for seminary. And I've been here about 8 years.
And you started at Dallas Baptist?
Dallas Theological Seminary. Baptist adjacent.
Baptist adjacent. And what led you from Dallas Theological to Perkins?
Yeah, so one of the benefits of being at Dallas Theological Seminary is they take the Bible serious and they try to teach you how to read it. And I read my way out of the seminary.
Yeah, it happens that way sometimes. I think you probably got, honestly, a better Bible education at Dallas Theological because you would take individual classes on each book of the Bible, right?
It wasn't each book of the Bible, but it's certainly less of a spread. So you would have
Yeah.
a class on poetry and wisdom literature versus just an Old Testament class.
Yeah, because at Perkins you take 2 Old Testament classes, and it's like you spend like 1 day on Job, and you're like, wait, that was the whole thing? Let's go back to it. But you just don't have time to be that focused on it. But then you move to Perkins, you got more of a sort of, I think at Dallas Theological you get the depth of the text, but at Perkins you get more contextualized, more big picture theological stuff. Do you think?
That's correct. I think Perkins expanded my worldview and taught me to incorporate and to bring in additional voices, whereas I feel that the theological voices at Dallas Theological Seminary were a little bit more narrow. Their bubble was a little bit tighter, and the expected deviation was a little bit more contained. So you weren't really allowed to stray too far out of the lines. Whereas at Perkins, I feel like you're encouraged to think through your theology very carefully. You're encouraged to really know where you land and know why you land there.
One of the things I remember talking about a lot when we were there is like the social location that you're coming from. And I always kind of pictured it as like there's this big giant mural on the wall, and we're each looking at the painting from a different perspective. But all of our perspectives are valid because we're all looking at the painting and we're all approaching it as a piece of art. So you can't say, to someone who's on the other side of the room that they're wrong because, what you have in your is closest to you is not what they have closest to them. But you're all looking at the painting.
Absolutely. And I think one of the gifts at Dallas Theological Seminary was I took cross-cultural ministry classes. And that's one of the things that they try to hammer home is that you can't show up into another person's context and tell them, well, your way of interpreting the scriptures is completely incorrect. And that's actually carried with me as I moved into new theological spaces is that other people from different contexts with different life experiences have a theological voice that matters, not just a select few that have been put on a pedestal.
Yeah, it's very humbling when you think you go into seminary like, this is what I believe, and you leave seminary like less confident about what you believe.
I've had my moments. I've had my crises.
Exactly. So we just ratified the new mission statement, and I've tried to bring it up, keep it in people's foreground. I said that we should put it on giant on the wall, but I was informed that we might be updating our font, so we can't, our official church font, so we can't put it on the wall yet because it might be in the wrong font if we do so. So we'll get it there eventually. But the mission statement is to magnify God's love for all people by creating space for belonging, purpose, justice, and joy. And I wanted to know what part of the mission statement is your favorite or jumps out to you the most?
Yeah, so I've wrestled with this a little bit because those words creating space, I think, have become a cliche in our cultural ethos right now.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit of there's a little bit of loss of meaning for me because everyone's creating space for everything all the time.
Oh, that's interesting.
But for me, I've had to hone in and focus on those words because it is so much of the work that we're doing here at First United Methodist Church Dallas. It's part of the work that you and Anna are doing in Studio 3A.
Yeah.
3A. It's part of the work that we're doing with launching a new modern worship service. We're always trying to think about how to expand our network and create space for additional people. And then to accomplish the purposes of the church, which is we want people to feel belonging, purpose, justice, and joy.
It's almost like if you're so busy creating space for everything, you're not creating space for anything.
Well, you certainly have to think about the spaces that you're creating, right?
Yeah.
You have to be intentional. You have to think about the people that you're inviting. And so just in those two words, you have to unpack them. And there's a lot of work to be done. And you don't just show up and the space is there.
How do you do that work?
Well, you have to know people, first and foremost. I was thinking about this. I was in Central Market the other day, and I walked right in, and the space is immediately overwhelming. But they funnel you through. It's like a maze, and their purpose is to create a space for you to buy their products. And they've done an incredible job with that. They have it set up so that you have to walk through every aisle, and every time that you turn the corner, there's something new and exciting. And by the end, you walk out with things that you never thought that you even needed. This happened to me just the other day. I spent way more money than I was expecting.
That's intentional.
I don't think that we should create consumeristic spaces like that here at our church.
Right.
But the level of detail and attention that they've put into creating that space for people, that makes it an exciting experience that encourages you to buy, that's the kind of work that we need to do for people to help them sense belonging, purpose, justice, and joy.
Okay, I'm going to go on an extended metaphor about grocery stores, and let's see if it makes any sense. So Trader Joe's is a great place to buy goods. No free ads. Trader Joe's, if you'd like to sponsor the show, we'll talk about you more.
They're going to send a cease and desist.
Exactly. So the layout of Trader Joe's, when I first started going when I lived in Dallas, is very calming. It's got wide aisles and low shelves, and it's almost like a meditative experience going inside Trader Joe's. Do you ever shop at Trader Joe's or no?
I do. I don't have that same meditative experience. But
Compared to the Kroger that I previously shopped at, it is much more calming.
That's correct.
So then I moved to New York City, and the Trader Joe's there is like an absolute catastrophe because it's so popular and there are not enough locations that it's swamped with people. And they actually have an employee whose sole purpose is to stand at the end of the checkout line because it wraps around the entire store, and they hold a giant sign that says, "This is the end of the line," so that you can look across the store and find where the end of the line is. And I know people who would go to Trader Joe's, they would stand in line, and then they would shop from the line because you're going to wrap around the whole store anyway, so you might as well just be in the line while you do it. And it's not calming. It's not meditative. It's like the exact opposite of that. So it's the same space that they have created, but in different contexts, it results in completely different things. So when you are creating space, as we're thinking about creating space as a church, it needs to be intentional to the context because it's going to be different for different places. Like belonging is going to look different in North Dallas or in North Texas than it is in other places. Purpose, justice, joy are going to look different in North Texas than they would in other places. Absolutely.
And in my theology classes, we would call this an incarnational model, meaning that this is showing up into the world as the world is, not asking the world to change and conform to the space. So just like Jesus showed up in the form of a human, we try to show up in the world as the world is, not as we will it or desire it to be. So what that means is that when we create a space for purpose, belonging, justice, and joy, we're not telling people, hey, show up, do exactly what we say to do, go through the motions, and eventually you'll be like us. What we're saying is we are like you, and we want us together to accomplish something good in the world through those four things.
That was much more profound and theologically driven than I was going for. So I appreciate
I thought your grocery store analogy was great.
No, thank you. Okay, that actually leads us into Evangelism, which is the series that we're in right now, the E Word. And Mitchell started us off last week. He's preaching in today. What is your history with the word evangelism? Is it, for me, it's kind of has a a negative connotation because it's been tied so closely to a more conservative political movement in the church, and we're kind of trying in this series to reclaim the word. What about you? What's your history with evangelism?
Yeah, I think the word reclaim is exactly what my story has been. I think all of us on some level are the product of evangelism. So it's tough to totally disassociate the Christian experience from the word. But I certainly, like you, had my own negative connotations with it. The first day that I showed up on my college campus when I was in school, a very passionate and enthusiastic Bible study leader cornered me on campus, handed me a tract, and sat down and talked me through it. I told him many times during the experience that I already was a Christian. And at the end of the track, he still asked me if I wanted to give my life to Jesus. So
It's like you're not listening. You're not converting anyone here.
I think he felt that there was a form of cultural Christianity that he could get through to a deeper, more profound spiritual experience. So in his mind, he needed to get me to the line of realizing that I may not be as Christian as I think I am. Which is not, I mean, at the time.
There's nothing that, I mean, there's something Wesleyan in that almost, because Wesley's first movement was really focused on people who were already in the church and being like, you're just kind of going through the motions. We really need you to get more in depth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where the heart is with evangelism, is that it's so often well-intentioned with good motives, but it misses context.
Yeah.
And so a lack of information can lead to misunderstanding. It can lead to bad faith action or good faith actions that are done in a way that are harmful to people.
And that actually push people away as the opposite intention.
Yeah, I didn't end up joining his Bible study.
Yeah, exactly. So, but if we do, ideally, if we have achieved our mission statement, or if we're working towards it, another Wesleyan idea that you're working towards perfection, not going to necessarily achieve it, that you are creating space for belonging, purpose, justice, and joy. That's going to be something that you want to invite people to, that you want people to participate in, that you want, something that's fulfilling for you. Obviously, you want other people to join in that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like Jesus' ministry is incarnational and Jesus' ministry is invitational, we're also an invitational people.
Look at that.
But there's ways to be invitational and ways that are natural.
Yeah. What? Just off the top of your head, what are some more natural ways to be invitational?
Well, I think everybody's looking to partner with other people and cooperate towards the good. Some of the most natural evangelistic experiences I've had were people who already had thoughts, questions, ideas, concerns, or cared about things that had to do with the faith life. Maybe they weren't on that step of their faith journey where they were ready to profess themselves as a Christian or even a believer in any kind of God, but for some reason they felt a draw or a pull towards a religious life, towards a spiritual practice, towards an idea in Christianity, and it led to a natural tie-in for conversation and an opportunity for invitation.
Yeah, to be open to those experiences when people at any point in their faith journey might be willing to go deeper or to expand, to be someone who's willing to go alongside them in that journey.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, all evangelism is a work of the Spirit, and it's a work of the Spirit in our lives and the lives of our community, and it's the work of the Spirit on people that already exist who God is drawing. Ultimately, everything comes down to choice. We all have a choice. And if we're trying to override people's decision-making and tell them what they need before they've decided that they really need this, then what we're going to do is end up overriding the work of the Spirit. The Spirit ultimately doesn't force us to do anything, isn't going to put us under a sense of pressure, isn't going to make us feel in any way less than, isn't going to make us feel like we lack. The Spirit may convict us of things, but ultimately the Spirit is inviting us into a life in God.
You're much better at putting things in theological words than I am, so I appreciate that. Let's move on to some announcements here. We've got a couple things coming up this week. The Enneagram and Grief is an event that's being put on by Suzanne Stabile, one of the experts in the Enneagram. If you don't know what the Enneagram is, definitely look it up. It's one of those personality things that I've found. I kind of bristle at the personality stuff, but the Enneagram I've actually really like. So she's doing a study on that and how it relates to grief. It's going to be really good. We're also starting a series class called Love Unites, which is for people who are about to be married or have just been married, sort of a premarital counseling class there. How long have you been married?
3 years.
So you don't need it. You're like an expert. You could be teaching this.
No, I really need this class.
You don't feel like
I
an
want them
expert.
to expand it.
Yes, it's just like
First 5 years.
yes, exactly. And then we're doing a lunch and learn on the Dallas City ballot, featuring Bethany Erickson from D Magazine. I talked about this last week. There are a ton of charter amendments that are going to be on the ballot in November if you live in Dallas, and it's very confusing. They actually a judge just threw out 3 of them, I think. So I'm even a little behind my information on what's going to be on the ballot. So if you are a voter in Dallas, you plan on voting in November, which everyone should be, you're going to want to learn from Bethany about what's going to be on the ballot. It's going to be, I think, at the end, and you're going to be very confused. So definitely want to get to that. And then finally, we've got a town hall coming up on October 13th. I think this is the first time we're mentioning the town hall. It's going to be about modern worship. You've been involved in the modern worship planning. How are you feeling about how it's going?
Well, it's going really well. We have just got to a stage where we're getting ready for our soft launch.
Okay.
And so we've got some key teams of people that are working in different buckets of labor to try to make sure that that space is ready
Oh, yes.
for
Look at the
belonging,
tie-in.
purpose, justice, and joy.
Oh, look at that. So you're going to want to come to the town hall on October 13th. You can do it in person or online to learn more about modern worship.